I'm Mark Glazer, Executive Editor of PBS MediaShift. Welcome to our spectacular Election Day 2012 live stream with various guests, superstars of the social media sphere. This year is a very special year. We always ask, every time there's an election, all of us political junkies who've been watching it minutely, we always ask ourselves, why is this year different than the other years? What's going to make a difference? What's going to tip the election one way or the other? It's a very close presidential race, and so it feels like almost anything could change the balance of what the result will be. The biggest thing this year seems to be the rise of social media. Social media was around in 2008, but it wasn't really capturing kind of the hearts and minds of the average voter. It was more of a techie, insider, younger type of thing. Now, when everyone's grandmothers are on Facebook, things have changed. Now, Facebook is much more prolific. Now, Twitter is in the conversation, whether you're watching it on TV or whether you're dual screening, watching TV and having Twitter up. According to Pew, they're saying that a third of adults under 30 in the US use social media as their primary source of news. And that's an amazing stat. That means those younger than 30 are going to social media more than they are to newspapers as their primary source of news, and it's the same amount as are going to TV for news. That's a big change in the way that media consumption happens. So I think one of the things we're going to talk about with a lot of our guests that are coming in, we've got guests coming through Skype video, we have guests that are going to come in here in San Francisco. We're taping in the Current TV headquarters in San Francisco, right across the street from AT&T Park, where the Giants, San Francisco Giants, just became World Series champions again. There were a lot of celebrations and riots and all kinds of things happening right outside the door here. So we're in the belly of Current TV, and we want to thank them for letting us host our live stream right here at Current TV. We want to thank USC Annenberg for being a sponsor and helping us to fund this, and also to Ustream. This is the first time we've used Ustream, so this will be a really interesting test to see how that works out for us. Let's turn to our first guest, Peter Greenberger, who's joining us from DC. He's the director of DC sales for Twitter. He does inside the Beltway sales for them, and he previously was at Google also doing DC related kind of public sector sales. Peter, welcome to the live stream.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
So tell me, now Twitter has become such a prominent place to follow what's going on when news breaks, when we've got hurricanes, disasters. It's become kind of a first responder mechanism. And when it comes to politics, what have you seen this cycle on Twitter that was different than before? Obviously, you've got these millions of tweets per second that happen during the debates and during all these events. What else is happening around this election cycle that's really almost like blowing your mind when it comes to Twitter?
Certainly the scale is impressive, as you mentioned. We've seen an exponential amount of politically related tweets this cycle, much different from what we've ever seen, and it just continues to grow. So we got some early stats back today. I guess the early exit poll version of Twitter saying that since midnight last night, we've seen 6.5 million election-related tweets. That's about 13,000 tweets per minute related to the election, which rivals what it was during the Republican convention this summer. So I think that'll continue to rise, obviously, as people keep voting, as the coverage continues. So the scale is incredible. But I think the other thing that is worth noting is how, to the extent that Twitter is driving the campaign narrative. There was the famous book a couple decades ago about the boys on the bus, the handful of reporters who followed around the presidential candidates, and they dictated what the news and the story of the day was. Now anybody with a Twitter account is on the bus, and you're seeing that narrative being written out in real time as events happen.
And tell me about, today, Election Day. Twitter is just awash with things around the election. If you look at the United States trending topics, there's for a while it seemed like half of them were related to the election. Obama bought a trending topic so that he would be at the top. I know Romney has also bought some trending topics during the debates and at other times. How do you see the candidates kind of using this, and how does it work for them? What kind of response, what kind of payoff do they get from buying those kinds of trending topics?
I would say taking a step back and analyzing what the campaigns are doing this cycle from a paid media perspective that's a little bit different from other years. I would say you are, for the first time, seeing a real shift in strategy to digital persuasion. So in previous elections, most dollars were spent online really for direct response, which means raising money, getting email addresses, and the like. You're starting to see more of those ad dollars go towards persuasion. So you see today the top promoted trend at Twitter, Go Vote, or Vote Obama, sponsored by the campaign as an effort, obviously, to get out the vote and encourage their folks to hit the polls. And that's what I think you're seeing is very different this time around. It's a persuasion mechanism because, as you said at the top, so many people are getting their news and information from social media and from the internet. Naturally, a lot of the dollars are going to flow onto the internet to reach these voters.
Yeah, and so when you talk about this persuasion part, I've heard a lot. I know Pew came out with some numbers about the percentages of people. 30% of people, registered voters, were encouraged by candidates or friends to vote on social media. 20% encouraged others to vote on social media. So we've got exactly what you're saying, this persuasion mechanism. Is there a way to track that?
We have all sorts of different initiatives going on to track that, as well as third parties and the candidates themselves. The most obvious way to measure it is through engagement, and we see terrific engagement on our tweets and obviously on our promoted tweets as well. And we define engagement as people clicking on those tweets, opening up the message, watching the video, retweeting it to their followers and their friends, replying or favoriting it. So you're seeing voters really engage very closely with the content, which is pretty remarkable, and something again that you haven't seen quite as much in elections past.
So tell me about now this election 2012 hashtag that you set up. Dan, do you want to pull up the web? We'll look at just what you guys. I know you've done this for some other events before this. There's kind of a special hashtag. You've created kind of a prettier page. You've got some bigger photos up. How does it work? What do you, some of them, I guess with the Olympics, you were working with NBC. In this case, was this just something you're doing independently?
That's correct. This is something that we've started doing with the Olympics, as you mentioned. We did what we call events pages as well for the debates, for the conventions, and then today on Election Day. So if you go to twitter.com/#election2012, you'll find this curated page of relevant tweets. So what we've tried to do is whitelist certain media accounts, secretaries of state, the folks who will be reporting the actual numbers as vote results start coming in, and put it onto one page that people can go to and turn to either in isolation or as they're watching television tonight to make sure that they're getting a 160-degree angle of election night news and returns.
And how does that work with someone like when you were working with the Olympics with NBC? How does that work exactly, that partnership? Is it something where you have editorial control, they have editorial control? How does that work exactly when you kind of do a deal with, let's say, a media company on an event?
In this case, this is independent, as have all of our political events pages, so both the debates and the conventions. This is something that we're working on. We maintain editorial control. We choose the accounts that are eligible for it. And the idea is to make this as good an experience as possible for users who are looking for another way to experience all this information. As I'm sure you've seen, it can get overwhelming in your timeline during events like this when you're seeing millions and millions of tweets flow through the pipes, some related to the election, some not. This is an opportunity to go to a curated page where the experience might be a little bit more user-friendly or at least a little bit easier to digest.
Can you tell me, obviously there's a lot more interest from the campaigns in buying on Twitter now. Can you give any numbers as far as how much campaigns or how much political money has kind of come into Twitter, or even like a percentage amount that it's more than, let's say, 2008 or 2010?
We've launched our political ads just this year. So this is our first cycle. I joined Twitter just over a year ago, and that's when we launched the team. So I have nothing to compare it to. What I can say is that we very quickly became a must-buy. When you hear of the handful of platforms that every campaign is active on in 2012, Twitter is among those. And what's nice is we've seen campaigns and issue groups use all three of our core products. We've got the promoted trend product, which we've mentioned, which Obama has taken advantage of today. And as you mentioned, Mitt Romney was the first candidate to do that during the conventions. Promoted accounts, which is an opportunity for campaigns to reach new users and accrue new followers. And then, of course, promoted tweets, where campaigns, when they're tweeting out their best content or their most important messages, they can have those tweets appear as promoted tweets in search on key terms or in the timelines of their users. So we've been very encouraged by what we've seen. We've seen well over 100 plus different campaigns and groups advertised with Twitter this cycle, and we believe this is only the beginning. Very typically you see in the next off year campaigns learning from what the presidentials did. So people will look to see what Obama did, what Romney did right. Part of what they're both doing very well, we think, is their Twitter strategy, and we'll see a lot more of it, not only in the lame duck Congress, but going forward into 2014.
Okay. I just want to mention before we continue our discussion that there's a social stream alongside Ustream. So if anybody has questions for Peter or for myself or any guests, feel free to go ahead and throw questions into the social stream, and we will try to respond to them, if we can or we have time. So please feel free to do that. Add to the social stream. I'll keep watching here to see as the questions come in, and we'll throw them at Peter or at myself or any of the guests coming up. Peter, tell me about, you've said that this has become now, you were at Google before doing kind of a similar thing. How does it differ, what you're doing at Twitter to what went on at Google? I'm guessing when Google political ad buys, they're talking about keywords, paid search, things like that. How does it differ when it comes to a politician or a political campaign buying on Google versus buying on Twitter?
I would say that's right. I spent 4 years at Google where I did much the same thing. I started their political ads team and built that up for a couple of years. They obviously have an array of products ranging from search with Google as well as videos on YouTube and some other products as well. I would say that there are similarities, of course. I guess we would both agree that I think campaigns should dedicate more resources to online, and that it's a great way to reach voters at different stages of the funnel or the decision process of making that vote. Twitter's got some differences, I think, in terms of the real-time nature of the product. There's just nothing like it right now. When something happens, as you mentioned, if there's breaking news, whether that's a storm or a political event, people just flock to Twitter to share their thoughts and opinions. And it's a great way to reach people in the moment, in real time. The second thing that I think is different is our influential audience. At some points, you think this is just all the reporters in the world on Twitter tweeting to one another their ideas and their thoughts and their storylines. That is partly true, and it's a great way to reach that sort of an audience. These are not only reporters, but these are the 1 in 10 Americans who are talking to everybody else about who to vote for, what film to see, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we've got this real-time community. We've got this very influential community, and those are two things that I think set us apart. What's also interesting is we've had a lot of success signing on campaigns from an advertising perspective very early on. That's partly because it's 2012 as opposed to 2007, 2008 when Google got started. But I also think it's because a lot of these campaigns were already on Twitter. A lot of these third-party organizations already see Twitter as a very valuable communications platform. So signing on to our ads products made a lot of sense.
Now, what do you think about, there's a lot of people, I feel like I get an email every hour or something from an analytics firm that's looking at social media, and I know you guys had kind of a Twitter sentiment that you were doing, kind of showing, sentiment was for Romney or for Obama, and we've seen a lot of these kind of infographics. We're actually running one on MediaShift right now from a group called Add This, where they're basically predicting who's going to win. Dan, you can bring it up on the web. Digital Dan is the behind-the-scenes web producer here. Anyway, they picked, they literally went out and picked the battleground states, saying, Colorado would go to Romney, Florida would go to Romney, New Hampshire would go to Obama, Ohio would go to Obama, etc. Based on Twitter sentiment. They're not so specific about how they're coming up with that. But I'm curious what you think about all these things. I know you guys have an effort. There's a lot of different efforts out there to try to somehow read the tea leaves using social media. And that seems like a little bit questionable just because not everyone is on it. I mean, not everyone is sharing their opinion. A lot of people don't even want to talk politics on Twitter or on Facebook. What do you think about all these?
And occasionally you do run into the snarky tweet.
Of course. And I guess these engines, these sentiment engines, are supposed to basically figure out snark, figure out cynicism, and understand when someone's joking or not. So I don't, this is, I guess, serious, artificial intelligence or something. But what do you think about that? And tell us a little bit about your Twitter sentiment that you guys have put together.
To date, I shouldn't say to date, but earlier in the cycle, we did focus a lot on and talk a lot about this tweets per minute, tweets per second metric, which is all about quantity. It's about volume, how many people are tweeting about a certain topic at a certain time. It's interesting, but as you say, it lacks sentiment. Everybody could be tweeting about Barack Obama, but if it's all negative, then that's not necessarily a very valuable metric. So we have looked more at sentiment analysis. We are doing a project called the Political Index, or the Twindex, which seeks to come out with a score every day on both candidates to figure out are the tweets about them more positive or more negative per day. And so it's what we'd probably say is an early effort at trying to divine these tea leaves and get an understanding of what people are saying. There's so much data here. There's so much information. There's such an opportunity to capture or at least try to understand the pulse of the planet on Twitter as well as Facebook and other forms of social media that I think you're going to keep seeing social media firms make efforts at this. And in some ways, it's wonderful. Obviously, there's a lot of data, and we need to figure out what it means. But at some point, we probably have to figure out, or at least stick to one metric, so that we can all understand what it means. But it's early. These are early days, and it's fascinating to watch. I would suggest take a look at that Twindex. It's interesting to watch. I saw something today from our folks working on this. 76% of the tweets in the battleground states that mention the term, the hashtag I voted, have Obama's name in it. So is that scientific? I'm not sure, but at least we know that people on Twitter who are voting are mentioning the president's name in these key states. But we'll see in the next few hours if that's indicative of what's going to happen.
Now I'm pulling up, this is the Twitter Political Index. It shows, I guess, Barack Obama is now at 66 plus 7, Mitt Romney's 56 plus 3. Is this up to date now? Is this being basically updated every minute or something like that?
It's near real time. And it's interesting to see that those numbers are very high where they've been over the campaign. And for most of the campaign, they hovered in the mid-30s for both candidates, which is saying that 3.5 out of 10 tweets were positive, which I think if we look at the tenor and the length of this campaign, that sounds about right. I think that most people out there are ready for this thing to end and get on with the business of governing, hopefully.
Definitely. One more question for you. We talked about the young people and how, people under 30 are using social media as their primary source of news. We noticed media usage really going away from traditional media and going towards online media and kind of new forms of media. Yet for years and years, the political campaigns have really just focused the vast majority of their money, which is obviously growing, on TV ads. Is that something that, you were at Google, now you're at Twitter. Is that something that's just frustrating that you just have to basically teach campaigns? What is it about TV ads that just, they're just so obsessed with TV ads that seem to me very easy to tune out now with DVRs and other things. Do you see anything changing when it comes to kind of the dominance of TV in political ads?
I think it's changing in the effect that more money is being put online. And people understand that as eyeballs move online and as people are dual screening to get content, or as you say, in some cases, single screening with the internet to find information about elections, that the ad dollars are moving that way. Television remains an incredibly powerful medium. And it is a great way to move numbers. It's a great way to reach, the best way to reach a mass audience very quickly. I think social media can play a powerful role in complementing it. So we like to think of Twitter plus TV as a great story here. Putting hashtags on your commercials. You're seeing corporate advertisers do that. You're just now starting to see that on campaigns. I think you'll see more of that in the next cycle. These things are all going to work together. As you noted, many people who are on Twitter are watching television at the same time. So this is a way to get real-time feedback, to have a conversation with a candidate, with a campaign. And those are the things that I think are really exciting that we're just starting to see. In some ways, what just happened in New York with Mayor Bloomberg canceling the marathon. Now, this is obviously unrelated to the campaign, but what it's interesting is it's getting us a step closer to direct democracy. You had a decision made by an elected official. You had a lot of people who disagreed with that decision. They were very vocal on Twitter and other forms of media, and they were vocal enough and powerful enough to actually get him to change his mind. So I think this is something to keep and watch. If it can happen there, we've seen it happen with some legislation, with SOPA, for instance, early in the year. Can it happen on the Farm Bill? Can it happen with respect to the fiscal cliff? Twitter is giving a voice now to millions of citizens, and I don't think they're going to stop tweeting when the polls close. I think that this is just a sign of what's to come.
What do you think about just the digital divide part of it, that not everyone necessarily is on social media as much? I mean, the fact that I guess it's mobile, is that something that you think can reach more people who might not be connected still?
That's right. Twitter has a wonderful story on mobile. We were born on mobile. That's why it's 140 characters. The SMS limits at the time were 160, so we give you 20 for your username and 140 for the content. We see, as our CEO has said, more revenue from mobile than from desktops and PCs on most days. The service works seamlessly and beautifully on mobile. So I think that's an opportunity to reach billions of users. You can use it with texting. In fact, during the hurricane, for those people who didn't have internet access or their cells weren't working, you could actually use texting to get your most important Twitter feed. So I think mobile presents a huge opportunity for us to help close that digital divide. And here in the U.S., that digital divide, I think, is shrinking naturally. And we are watching our user base grow and grow and grow, and we think we represent a good chunk of the American people now.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Peter Greenberger from Twitter. We really appreciate you stopping by, and good luck with the deluge that's going to be coming all day and night at Twitter.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Mark, and good luck to you, and good luck with the rest of the webcast.
Okay, take care. Okay, we'll be right back after this break with our next guest, Michael Stoll from SF Public Press. Well, welcome back to our live stream, Election Day live stream, PBS MediaShift here at the Current TV studios, where they're basically filming live right outside of our little room in the belly of the beast at Current TV in San Francisco. We just had Peter Greenberger from Twitter come on and talk about how Twitter is changing things, and now we have Michael Stoll from the San Francisco Public Press. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much.
Tell us, I mean, you're at a nonprofit, a local nonprofit covering San Francisco. First, before we get into the election stuff, tell us a little bit about SF Public Press. And, I went to one of your advisory kind of meetings early on, and I remember you guys talked about having an online presence and also having a print newspaper. And to me, this was a few years ago, and I just thinking, having a print newspaper, like launching a print newspaper sounded crazy, but you guys have pulled it off. I mean, you're putting them out, every quarter or something like that. So, I mean, just tell us first, like, how you're doing print and online together.
So the idea came from, a whole bunch of journalists getting together in around 2008, 2009, noticing that the local media scene was really hollowing out. There had been, almost half a decade of layoffs and buyouts at the mainstream media, and the local newspaper, and oh, on would be good.
Try again.
Yeah. So the public press started out as a local initiative among journalists who really cared about the local media scene and saw it being hollowed out. Layoffs and buyouts at the mainstream press, the Chronicle, the Examiner, the local television stations, and we all thought that we had to do something as journalists to keep the media alive, to keep local accountability journalism in particular alive. And we looked at a lot of different models, and the two models that we saw that were kind of sustainable and not necessarily growth industries, but at least would sustain the kind of local, sober, important journalism were public broadcasting and small local newspapers. And so what we did was we produced a hybrid. We sell a newspaper. It's somewhere.
Here, I'll hold it up while you're talking.
It's called the San Francisco Public Press. It's an old-style broadsheet.
I was going to say, this is like the style of what you would see, if, back in the Dewey defeats Truman days or something, like a big newspaper saying, but you're not going to do something tomorrow, I take it, in print.
No. We're quarterly.
Okay.
And we're starting small. We're starting really grassroots. With a little bit of seed funding from some foundations, from members like in public broadcasting. We also do online micro donations, and we're making it work. It's a mostly volunteer-run operation, but our goal all along was to produce high-quality work, to shoot for investigative, explanatory public policy reporting, and we find that actually we get a lot of people really excited about the print edition, much more so when you're talking about local people who have the ability to make FaceTime, the ability to talk over local issues, to have some kind of a physical interaction. Than it would be if we had just launched online and stayed online and been this sort of abstract thing. There have been a lot of online startups. Some of them have gotten much higher web traffic than we have, but very little engagement.
Like Base Citizen, for example, or?
Well, Base Citizen was another local startup. They started out with a lot of money, and they frankly burned through it pretty quickly. I was very excited about what they did in the beginning. The idea of partnering with the New York Times to leverage that brand to accelerate the idea of public media, of nonprofit journalism on a local level. And it's happening in a lot of communities in Texas, in San Diego, Minneapolis, St. Louis, and New York. It's failed in some communities as well, in part because they started so big that they fell on their face. There have been two notable ones in Chicago. So the record is mixed, and we're all, there are hundreds of nonprofit startups doing local, serious local news around the country, and some of them will succeed and some of them won't, and I think a lot of that has to do with the business model. For us, the business model included print because we're able to charge $1 for it, and it actually breaks even on the print edition. And we're able to get street presence. We're able to have it in front of people's faces. Whereas if we were doing it all online, it would be very abstract and impersonal.
And speaking of online, let's take a quick look at your site. Dan can maybe bring this up. This is the SF Public Press site. And you guys have this really interesting infographic that you created kind of in San Francisco. This is the local elections for the Board of Supervisors, and you kind of went through all the candidates and kind of went through, it was just like a very easy infographic to look at the candidates, see whether they, what their stands were on kind of key issues. And it's also, obviously, it's on the back of the newspaper too. I mean, you have it literally like on the back of the paper, which I think is, is a great idea. So you're basically taking the infographic from the paper and also posting it online. That was also a collaboration, right?
That was a three-way collaboration with researchers at the University of California, Davis, who are working on several long-term studies of voter behavior in San Francisco. It's a fascinating body of work, looking at, basically taking the positions that the candidates themselves profess and clustering the candidates by their politics, but making no value judgments, not weighing in on on what is left, what is right, what's progressive or moderate in the San Francisco lingo, which is the kind of the two extremes. So we partnered with them. We were their print outlet. We also produced, in addition to this, colorful graphic, which we were able to, which really only fits on a 14.5-inch wide broadsheet newspaper, but it kind of fits on a laptop screen if you have a big enough screen. But the idea is we could do something different. We could do something engaging, eye-catching, and actually use print media for what it's best at doing, which is creating a handy guide that you can take into the ballot box with you. I'm not sure if you can take an iPad in, but it's certainly much easier to take something like this in with you and go down the list and say, okay, this person is for this and against this and doesn't know about this. Well, if someone doesn't know about something, maybe they're not the candidate for me if they don't have opinions about major issues. We also, in addition to this, so the graphic we posted online for free in addition to putting it on the back page of the newspaper, and we also produced PDF versions of much more detailed responses of all, I think, 45 questions that we asked. We also worked with the League of Women Voters, San Francisco, which produced all of these, I think, 4 or 5 public candidate forums around the city and distributed this, and it became a conversation piece.
What else? What other partnerships have you taken? I mean, if you look at local politics in San Francisco, even state or regional politics, there are, it's true that the kind of traditional media like Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, will have someone, Marissa Lagos is going to come by and talk about their efforts. But you have kind of the local TV, local radio, local print, and now kind of the rise of some of the onlines. How do you kind of differentiate yourself when it comes to local politics with so many, you also have kind of the alt weeklies and so many other people kind of trying to chime in, how do you differentiate yourselves?
Well, being a small organization that works with freelancers and volunteers, we don't have any staff right now. We have to pick our battles. Everyone has a niche in the ecosystem, and we have made a very conscious decision to not compete on breaking news, except when we know we have a scoop. We cover long-term trends. We do in-depth reports on issues that reporters are covering on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. And most of the work that we're most proud of are these long-term, 3-month or more projects, that touch on elections. And so the next one we're doing is on earthquake safety. At some point, there's going to be a major earthquake safety bond measure on the ballot in San Francisco. We're getting a year ahead of where the elections are now. There are scads of websites that are breaking their backs trying to get the election results a microsecond before, or a picosecond before their competition. We can't compete with that. We don't have the staffing, and in a lot of ways that frees us up to do what we consider the work that's most neglected, which is the long-term, the explanatory enterprise, and some investigative reporting.
And how does it work as far as your kind of funding mechanism? Do you have kind of grants, you have sponsorships, you have kind of individual donations? How does that break down?
At this point, we're getting about half of our funding through grants. We have we've been funded by about a dozen foundations. Nothing really big. Anyone there who works for a foundation, we would love your support.
Making the pitch right here on the live stream. Just you don't have to worry about voting. Just, support SF Public Press.
sfpublicpress.org/donate. Thank you.
Get it in.
We also, we also do Well, we also over the last 2 years or so, we raised about $25,000 through microfunding, particularly through a website called Spot.us, which is kind of in limbo right now. But we're also looking at Kickstarter and other
Public
places.
Media, right?
It's at American Public Media, and I
Right.
think they're retooling it.
Okay.
But a fair amount of our funding comes from individual donations. We start at $35, and I think our largest individual contribution was $500. And so you create a donor pyramid from that. You thank your donors profusely. You give them, free access to events that you hold, and you can create a community that way of supporters. And we have, every time we send out an email asking for money, we get dozens of people within 24 hours sending in money on PayPal and writing us checks in the mail, and that keeps us going. That keeps what we're doing alive. It's not going to be super profitable, but we don't need to be super profitable because we're a nonprofit.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for coming by. We really appreciate
Thank you so much.
stopping by. Good luck with SF Public Press.
Thank you.
We're all rooting for you. Okay, we'll be back right after this brief break, and we'll have James Davis, who was the Director of Communications of the GOP convention, joining us and talking about what's going on Election Day for him. We're back again on the live stream for Election Day 2012, PBS MediaShift, coming to you from Current TV. We had some technical difficulties, as happens when it's the first time you've ever tried to do something. Luckily, Digital Dan here, our producer, and Bill Frank from Current TV were able to iron it out. We have James Davis back on the line. He was the Director of Communication for the 2012 GOP convention. He's currently doing some political consulting, and previously he worked for the RNC, the Republican National Committee, and also helped as an Assistant Director of Communications at the 2008 GOP convention. Welcome to the live stream, James.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you had some technical difficulties today as far as getting online. What happened today?
Yeah, you know what? If you can call having Comcast technical difficulties, no, my wireless internet went out and had some trouble patching through at a speed that's good enough to conduct a Skype interview. So we went with what we thought was a more fail-safe mechanism of doing a telephoner.
Always a good backup. So now, when you did the GOP convention, you did some pretty interesting things. I'm going to pull up kind of the website that you guys had for the convention, and you had this kind of what you call the convention without walls. You were using Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google+, blog, Pinterest, Foursquare, Flickr, LinkedIn, Instagram. I mean, how did you do all that, number one? And number two...
Well, you missed some. I mean, we did text messaging. I mean, we did all kinds of stuff. Google Hangouts. But we really went into the convention and sold it on the leadership that we really had to have a comprehensive strategy in order to not only transmit information out, but to really open up the convention like it had never been done before. One of the kind of mystiques around conventions and the history of conventions is that there's some smoke-filled room, and that may have been true in the past, but certainly in the digital era, it's an open room for transparency and communication, and we really feel like that really appeals better to the grassroots mobilization efforts that you have to put forward, and really engaging citizens across the country. Not only that, but also taking the convention experience to our men and women that are serving our country proudly overseas at forward operating bases as well. And so we came at this with a little bit of a different angle of not just looking at it as a communications platform, but looking at it as an activation platform.
Yeah, and what did you, out of all, I mean, you're obviously doing so many different things. I've got Google Plus up and what you did there for the convention. I mean, what, out of all these things, was there anything that surprised you, that you were surprised kind of worked better than you expected it to? I mean, was it a dominant, was Twitter and Facebook kind of the dominant things?
Well, you know, as of any strategy, it's great to have alternatives and different options to executing on that strategy, but you really have to have a central point, and for us, that was our YouTube page. We decided very early on that instead of having a website which an individual might go to, they may read, consume the information, and may even pass it along to one or two people in conversation, we wanted to build a website in a dynamic setting that was ultimately a very engaging and interactive experience, and it allowed individuals to consume information and to immediately start having conversations around it. So just taking what used to be kind of a stale place to pull information from and really making it a centerpiece to conversations online. And so we worked with Google to build this highly customized YouTube page. We did have a website, and if you're on our website now, you can see that, but everything pointed back to that YouTube page. Our Twitter strategy pointed back to the YouTube page, our Facebook strategy, Pinterest, everything that we did pointed back to that single point. And that allowed us to look at broad sets of data and really have good analytics for, you know, what audiences were seeing the information that we were putting out, and giving people an ability to have immediate conversations around those. And I think that part of the 4 million tweets that we received, 4 million plus tweets around the Republican convention, was enhanced greatly because of this central platform where we were pushing our ad dollars all to our YouTube page, and how the Twitter feed and the Facebook feed and our blog and other elements were built into that.
What was it about YouTube that you guys decided to make that kind of your central hub? I mean, it's a really nicely designed, it really looks nice. It's got this kind of modular thing where you actually have tweets highlighted, you've got videos and photos and things on there. I mean, it's a really nice, pretty, you know, beautiful page. What else was it about that you liked having YouTube as kind of your home base?
Well, YouTube is obviously has an ability to carry and hold a lot of video, and video being one of the dominant content buckets that really dominate social media. We felt like it was just a good place, and the partnership we struck. We had several official partners during the convention. One of our partnerships was with Google, and so they helped us to build out that YouTube page to really carry out those objectives.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you joining us on the live stream. Sorry for all of the technical issues on both of our sides, and we hope that Comcast comes back for you.
Yeah, no worries. You know, I think looking at this election is interesting, but you know, as you kind of move forward, you know, I think what's more interesting is what the trends are moving to the next elections. And
what do you think? What do you think they'll be? I mean, what do you think will be different next election?
There are a number of things. I mean, if you look at Twitter this election as an example, you have several different mechanisms to purchase advertising to jump into conversations, such as, you know, promoted tweets or promoted hashtags. One of the things that I haven't seen is that there's a lot of analysis that goes into the demographics of certain television shows, and while we have recognized the trend that an individual individuals are more and more tweeting along with their favorite television shows or maybe their football game or whatever. Right. Twitter does not have a means right now as to which you can buy a promoted tweet if an individual is using a certain hashtag. So you kind of already have the data built in. If you're already running, you want to run ads on ESPN because you're trying to reach college football fans. If they're tweeting with hashtags for college football, you should be able to just go ahead and market an additional tweet to them as a means to reaching that same demographic, since you've already done the research analysis. Additionally, it seems kind of archaic that you would punch in search terms into a box. So what's the trend for search in the next election, and how can we use that as PR professionals to really target our message when an individual is going to use search? I mean, Google, it's had 5 consecutive quarters of downturn in the search. And, you look at a company like Apple, where it's more natural to have a conversation with Siri and have Siri give you your search results. But how is advertising and how is Apple going to work to kind of monetize that? And then what are the ways marketers and communications professionals can really break into that vertical?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot more customization, a lot more almost like artificial intelligence, a lot more ways to target people through social media than you can now, just because it's not, I guess some of the tools just aren't as mature as they will be in 2 years or 4 years.
Absolutely. And then you think about the tools that are used in every election and have been used in many elections now, but are fading out, like robocalls. Certainly a lot of people are getting robocalls still, and there's still effective ways for reaching voters. But with legislation that's in place that won't allow you to call cell phones, and many Americans, my family included, who don't even own a land phone, that's a missing population. So,
yeah.
How is the strategy changing to reach those missing populations and demographics?
Yeah.
So there's a lot there to consider, and a lot that has to be worked out. And I think that it's going to be a good challenge for campaigns moving forward.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate it. Hope your election day improves and your technology comes back online. And we'll talk to you again another time soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay,
have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.